Understanding the types of higher spiritual beings. There's a great deal of confusion in the spiritual community about types of spiritual beings and how to discern true guides from false light beings. So, let's clear up the confusion now. The simple truth is that whether you are aware of it or not, as physical beings, we're all surrounded by an incredible number of spiritual beings existing just outside of our normal perception. Most people aren't aware of the influence of spiritual beings who are always connecting with us, guiding us, and influencing us, for better or worse. And most people simply interpret the impulses and creative inspirations coming from the spiritual realm as if they've arisen from within. This happens because, for those who aren't aware of the subtle realms of spirit, the influences of spiritual beings are received by the subconscious and not the conscious mind. And so as a result, often what you think is coming from your mind, or your emotional being, is actually coming from external spiritual beings. And here's the thing. While many people who are in contact with the higher spiritual realms have grown accustomed to simply trusting whatever spiritual beings show up for them, not all higher spiritual beings are benevolent or beneficial for you. Discernment of higher spiritual beings. I share this not at all to instill fear, but quite the contrary, to simply highlight the importance of discernment. Discernment is key for becoming aware of whether your thoughts, feelings, and impulses to action are arising from within you, or if they're coming from external spiritual beings. And then secondly, it's so important to be able to discern between spirits who are contacting you. So if you do realize that you're receiving guidance from an external spiritual being, you can then discern as to the true nature of that higher spiritual being, and whether the guidance you're receiving is something you want to act on. Learn more about discernment here. An extra layer of the challenge when it comes to discerning among higher spiritual beings is that in modern metaphysics the spiritual realms are usually described as being all beneficial. Or when it is recognized that there are less than trustworthy beings, they're usually classified using a dualistic system, i.e., higher spiritual beings are either of the light beneficial, or of the dark harmful. This, however, is not a complete and accurate way of understanding spiritual beings, and there are actually highly evolved light beings who can be detrimentally influential. The influence of less than beneficial light beings is talked about in the New Age community a bit, and when it's referred to as false light, but honestly, it's not really false light either. There are beings of real higher light who are detrimental to connect with, not because their light is false but rather because it's unbalanced. The quality of light of this group of light beings I'll describe more shortly is ungrounded and distorted, and their guidance leads into an illusory experience, and towards spiritual delusions. And yet, many people are acting upon the guidance of these unbalanced light beings without realizing this important distinction. So really, to understand the essential nature of spiritual beings, it's helpful to classify spiritual beings into three types of beings rather than the overly simplified light-dark dualistic classifications. This threefold classification of higher spiritual beings comes from Rosicrucian teachings and especially the work of Rudolf Steiner, a 20th century philosopher, scientist, and esotericist. Three types of higher spiritual beings. Again, despite being more highly evolved than humans, not all higher spiritual beings are of the utmost support to humanity as we progress on our paths of self-realization. By first becoming aware of this, we can then learn to discern among these beings and make the conscious choice to work with, listen to and act upon the guidance from those beings who can truly support our journey. And also become aware of the type of beings standing behind certain teachers, institutions, and teachings. The three types of higher spiritual beings are beings of the middle path, beings of extreme, unbalanced spirituality, and beings of extreme, unbalanced materialism. Let's start by looking at the beings of the middle or center path. Beings of the middle path. The higher spiritual beings of the center or middle path are those who hold the perfect balance between spirit and matter and are therefore able to guide beneficially humanity through advanced and balanced spiritual development. These are spiritual beings who are most beneficial to work with as they can guide you to stay centered and balanced as you progress on your path of spiritual awakening, conscious expansion, and self-realization. These beings of the middle path, which are sometimes referred to as mycelic or Christic beings, perfectly hold the balance between spirit and matter without being pulled off balance to either extreme. The beings within the angelic hierarchy, the Christ being, Buddha, Mother Mary, true ascended masters, and Archangel Michael are beings who exemplified this center path, clearly exhibiting divine qualities of the infinite God, source within their fractalized and individualized form. Beings of the middle path are on track in their personal ascension, evolutionary process, walking the path of the center. And they can help you to stay on track on your own center path of awakening. Again, I'm sharing this so you can begin to learn to discern when you're connecting to spiritual beings in your day-to-day life, through teachings, and through receiving guidance. And then know whether the guidance comes from beings of the center path, or if it's distorted towards being overly spiritual or overly materialistic. The key is not to say, okay, I'll only connect with Archangel Michael for example, and then I'll be safe. But rather, recognize that you can develop the discernment to recognize when spiritual beings are influencing you, because again, this happens all the time, and for the most part, beneath the surface of the conscious waking mind. The Christic beings of the middle path are dependable guides who are able to guide and assist us in advancing spiritually while staying grounded and balanced between extremes. More on how to develop this discernment to follow. But now, let's look at the next type of spiritual being. The beings of unbalanced light, or spirituality. Beings of extreme, unbalanced spirituality. Higher spiritual beings of unbalanced spirituality are known in Rosicrucian teachings as the Lucifer Ik Beings. Yes, these beings are named after the being Lucifer, whose name means light-bearer. But don't jump to any conclusions about what that means just yet. Lucifer Ik beings are highly evolved light beings who are far more advanced than humans, but they lack understanding as to the value and purpose for spiritual beings to take on a physical incarnation on the earth plane. They've essentially fallen out of their normal evolutionary path as angelic beings. And as a result, they're ungrounded and unbalanced spiritually, and so their teachings are also unbalanced and ungrounded. Many Lucifer Ik beings do want to help humanity, but they look down on us with a sort of condescending pity, seeing humanity as young naive spirits who incarnated into the physical unnecessarily, only to be open to great suffering for no real reason. They lack the awareness of the incredible growth and advancement possibilities available within the physical realm, and so while not overtly malicious, and many Lucifer Ik beings want to help and can share incredible gifts of the light, the teachings and guidance of these unbalanced beings of the light become distorted through their lens that only the spiritual realities are real or important and that the physical realms are merely an illusion. Their light and guidance has a way of blinding and distorting those they work with, who can easily be deluded and led into levels and levels of illusion. Also, because these beings don't value life in the physical, or see the benefits in the lessons the physical realm provides, their guidance tends to lead people to avoid the hard lessons of physical reality, spiritual bypassing. And they may lead beings towards substances that weaken, essentially poison, the physical body to gain a spiritual experience, substances like opiates, i.e. heroin, oxycontin, cannabis, certain psychedelics like ayahuasca, as well as psychotropics, i.e. Xanax, cocaine, as subtly and often through guidance received at the subconscious level promoted. Lucifer Ik beings also have a way of boosting up the egos of spiritual seekers. They'll share with you amazing things about how advanced you are, how you're a master, and how you're special. And through this, they can have a way of getting you to overestimate your present level of spiritual development, which can have all sorts of ramifications, including missing out on growth opportunities because you think you're already there. We all come in contact with these types of unbalanced light beings. And in a way, they pull us towards spirituality and freedom, but if we only listen to them, we can become very ungrounded and can be led astray. This is why discernment is so key, as is maintaining focus on balanced physical and spiritual mastery and humility, which changes our point of resonance and helps us to attract beings of the middle path who can more accurately guide and assist us. Beings of extreme, unbalanced materialism. On the other side of the polarity coin, there exist higher spiritual beings who are unbalanced towards the material. These beings are known in Rosicrucian teachings as the Manic Beings. Manic beings are much older and more advanced than humans. Many of them were actually involved in the creation and crystallization of the physical world. But they too have fallen off course and out of their normal evolutionary process due to their extreme focus on matter and the physical planes of density. These beings have no reason, permission to incarnate into the physical realm. They have evolved beyond the need for physical incarnation, and yet they have a great love for the physical, and through their guidance and influence they pull humans towards materialism and atheism. Their teachings revolve around how spirit is illusion and matter, and what can be measured in the physical is the only reality. And they pull humanity away from spirituality towards the material. When certain humans influenced by Manic beings ignore the guidance leading them away from spirit, the Manic beings tend to change their tone, and start guiding humans towards occult materialism and low forms of magic that fuel the lower desire nature through manipulating others. They teach higher spiritual concepts in a lower, distorted and materialistic form so their students may learn to manipulate others using gray or black magic, through manifesting money to gain power over others and satisfy personal desire no matter the cost to others or to the planet. They exemplify the service to self path. Their guidance can be detrimental in many ways. And yet without them, the physical world wouldn't have been created. The polarity created by the Manic and Lucifer Ik beings is required for us to have the earthly experience, to choose freedom, and to have the many opportunities for physical and spiritual growth available to us. Polarity is a requirement for growth and advancement, and for this we're able to have gratitude for all the beings, and appreciation for the path of choice and freedom their presence opens us up to, and in a sense the sacrifice they've made falling off the path. So we can be reminded to stay on it and to grow. Interestingly, the name Manic comes from the Zoroastrian tradition where Ahriman was believed to be the Dark Lord of the Earth. In Gnostic teachings, this being is called the Demiurge, and for Egyptians, this dark being was called Set, which when filtered from Egypt into Hebrew traditions became Hasatan, and now is commonly referred to as Satan in modern religious teachings. Quite interestingly, modern religions have mixed up these two types of spiritually detrimental beings into one being, which is called either Lucifer or Satan. You'll now know that hidden in this teaching is the deeper truth of the overly spiritual and overly material spiritual beings who can pull us off our center. Quick recap of the three types of beings. So just to recap and clarify here. Lucifer Ik beings are the light beings of unbalanced spirituality who bring great light and even tremendous gifts. But their light is ungrounded and quickly becomes so illusory. Manic beings influence us to lose or ignore spirituality or draw people into low-level black or gray magic that feeds the lower desire nature and distorts higher teachings and spiritual concepts. FYI, black magic is simply when you use spiritual principles to manifest something that is for your benefit at whatever cost to others. Manifesting that is not in the highest interest of all. It's very commonly taught and used in our world today under the influence of Manic beings operating beneath the surface. Balanced spiritual and material. The type of beings we can most benefit through working with are the beings of the middle path, who guide us to perfectly balance the spiritual and material realms so we can develop spiritually in a balanced way and attain the highest levels of light and consciousness available to us, while grounded and being present in the physical. There are references to this threefold path hidden throughout religion. The Kabbalistic tree of life shows that on the middle path, we can reach higher up, and ground wide of the earth compared to the overly spiritual, left, or overly physical, right, paths. The teachings about Jesus on the cross also take on extra symbolic meaning with this understanding. The thief on the left, representing Lucifer Ik beings, and the thief on the right, representing Manic beings. The key is to discern who we're connecting with so we can stay centered ourselves on the middle path of balanced spiritual growth and mastery of both the spiritual and physical realities. How to attract beings of the middle path. I want to emphasize here that throughout our life experience, everyone naturally encounters both beings who are unbalanced spirituality, and beings who are unbalanced physically. Sponsored links. This is why discernment is so important. These beings can influence us, but ultimately as humans who are spirits of love and freedom, we have the free will to make our own choices and discern how to act, and who to listen to. And as with all things, resonance is key to who and what we attract into our experience. In other words, the quality of energy we're generating and sending out determines what kind of beings we attract. Working to stay balanced and centered ourselves, and to clarify our thinking, feeling, and willing empowers us to attract the beings of the middle path and of the highest Christ